everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a video on my auto by authors. These are authors who any of their new books that come out in the future or books that they have in the past that I haven't read are automatically added to my TBR because I've read enough books from them that I know I love their writing style. I know I love how they tell stories. So without further ado, let's get right into this list. I'm going to break it down by genre because I have quite a few authors to talk about here. So let's start off with the fantasy genre. The first author I have to talk about is Kristoff, the author of Nevernight, the author of Lifelike, the author of the Illuminate Files, well, one of the co-authors of the Illuminate Files. I love Kristoff's writing. I love how dark his fantasy stories are, and I just know that any story he releases in the future, I'm going to want to read. The next author that I have on the list is V.E. Schwab. So V.E. Schwab is Victoria Schwab. Her adult pen name is V.E. Schwab, and I'm specific to her adult books here because I know she also has a ton of like middle grade / YA books out there that I have not read as many of, but for her adult series, Vicious and Vengeful are two of my favorite fantasy books of all time. I loved the Darker Shades of Magic series, so any fantasy she comes out with in the future, especially in the adult category, I'm absolutely going to pick up, and I definitely want to get around to reading more of her young adult stuff. I just love her stories and can't wait to read more from her. The next author that I have to talk about is Leigh Bardugo, author of the Grisha trilogy, starting with Shadow and Bone, also author of Six of Crows duology. Oh my god, something caught my throat. I love Leigh Bardugo's writing. I love her fantasy stories and her world building, so I know that any books she comes out with in the future I'm going to read, especially like King of Scars I still need to read, Ninth House that just came out I'm absolutely going to read. I just love her writing, so definitely Leigh Bardugo deserves to be on this list. And the last fantasy author I need to talk about should come as no surprise to anyone who's watched any of my previous videos, but that is going to be Brandon Sanderson. I have now read The Way of Kings and The Words of Radiance. I've read The Mistborn, both eras, those trilogies, and I've read Warbreaker. All of them I love, so any books he comes out with in the future, and then also all of his books from the past that I haven't read are all on my TBR. I love his characters, I love his worlds especially, and his magic systems. I just love what he does. So this is definitely probably my favorite fantasy author and definitely an auto-buy author for me. Next genre that I have is thriller. So here are some of my auto-buy authors for some thriller books. The first being Sara Pinburrough, the author of Behind Her Eyes, which even though this isn't my favorite thriller ever, it's one of my favorite twists ever in a book. I think it's so insane. Just am so intrigued by what she has to come out with in the future. I have her other book, Cross Her Heart. That doesn't even make sense. Cross Her Heart. And I can't get over it. I just said that. So I'm very excited to read that one, and hopefully I love it as much as I loved Behind Her Eyes. And then any book in the future she comes out with, I'll be picking up for sure. So Sara Pinburrough. The next author that I have is Gillian Flynn. I have read Dark Places and Sharp Objects, and even though, again, these aren't some of my favorites, just really like how dark Gillian Flynn's writing and stories are. They're slightly disturbing, actually a lot disturbing, but I'm still very intrigued by them. I still need to read Gone Girl, and I need to read the short story, The Grown Up, that Gillian Flynn put out, but if she comes out with any future books, I'm going to be adding them to my TBR, as I'm sure a lot of other people are going to as well. And then another author that I have is Jane Harper. I've read The Dry and The Force of Nature by Jane Harper. I still need to read her newest book, The Lost Man, but I love the atmosphere that Jane Harper creates in her books. They're just so rich and you feel like you're really there in those settings that she describes. So I just love her style of writing, and I loved The Dry. This is definitely one of my top thrillers, so I'm into her. I really like her writing, so anything Jane Harper comes out with, I'll be picking up. And then the last author I have to talk about should come as no surprise, and that is Blake Crouch, who wrote Dark Matter. This is actually the only book I've read by him so far, but it made such an impression with me. It's one of my top 10 favorites of all time, and I know I'll love his new one, Recursion, if it's anything like Dark Matter. And then I also need to read his Wayward Pines series that I've heard great things about. So I know that I will be picking up a lot more of Blake Crouch's works, and anything he comes out with in the future will of course be on my radar and probably be on my TBR. So the last spot for this particular genre goes to Blake Crouch. The last genre that I have that I'll be discussing is contemporary / romance. So here are some of my auto-buy authors from that genre, starting with Jojo Moyes. I have read 4 Jojo Moyes books so far, The Girl You Left Behind being my favorite, but I also love 1+1. That's probably tied or very close to being just as good as The Girl You Left Behind. And then of course I've read Me Before You, which is how I think most people know Jojo Moyes, is from Me Before You. And then I've read The Last Letter from Your Lover. All of them I've really enjoyed. I just love her style of writing. I love the characters she creates. And her books are just so easy for me to read, so I fly through them. I know I like her style of writing, so any books that she comes out with and all of her past books, because there's a lot that I need to catch up on, I'm definitely going to read. The next author that I have on this list is that's the title of the book. Taylor Jenkins Reid is the author of One True Loves, also the author of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is incredibly popular, and then also her newest book, Daisy Jones and the Six. I've not read yet, but I've heard incredible things and I can't wait to pick it up. So Taylor Jenkins Reid is definitely on my radar. I plan on reading a lot more of her books. I really enjoyed One True Loves, and I also really enjoyed The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So I'm very intrigued by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I'm definitely planning on reading a lot more from her. Another author that I wish she would come out with more books, and that is Jandy Nelson, the author of I'll Give You the Sun and The Sky is Everywhere, both of which I've read, both of which I've loved. I'll Give You the Sun is probably my favorite YA contemporary ever, and I don't usually like YA contemporary, so I can't believe how much I love this book. I need Jandy Nelson to come out with more books. She's supposed to have another book. It's kind of on Goodreads. It doesn't have a cover. I don't think it has a release date, but just anything she releases, I will be the first to buy because I just love her writing so much. So definitely Jandy Nelson on this list. And then we've also got, of course, LeAnn Moriarty, author of Big Little Lies, which everyone who has read it, I've not heard of a single person who disliked this book. Everyone who's read it loves it. The TV show was great. So LeAnn Moriarty also has written a ton of other books, a lot of which I've actually read. What Alice Forgot is probably my second favorite to Big Little Lies, but I also really loved 3 Wishes. And what was the other one? My Husband's Secret. All of those I loved. I've also read The Last Anniversary by LeAnn Moriarty and wasn't as crazy about it, but nonetheless, I love LeAnn Moriarty's writing. I love the characters she creates, so I'm absolutely going to read any and all LeAnn Moriarty books. And I know she has some more recent ones that don't have as great of ratings, so I haven't been in quite as big of a rush to pick those up, but I'm still going to read them and form my own opinion because I love everything I've read from LeAnn Moriarty, maybe except The Last Anniversary. That one was a little bit of a letdown, but the rest of them I've loved. So definitely LeAnn Moriarty. And then the last author I have on this list is a new author that I discovered this year, and that is actually a duo, and that is Christina Lauren, author of The Unhoneymooners, author of Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, as well as Love in Other Words. I loved Josh and Hazel, and I loved The Unhoneymooners so much. I just read Love in Other Words and wasn't as crazy about that book. I do have a review coming up for that one pretty soon, but I loved these two books enough where I'm hooked on Christina Lauren's writing. These books are so bingeable. I flew through this book and Josh and Hazel, and their characters and the build-up for this romance that they've created in both of these books is just so incredible. So I love, love, love their writing, and I can't wait to read what else they have out there. So those are all of my auto by authors. I know that's a lot, but I really like finding an author's works that I really like and collecting a large portion of their books for my collection. So some of those authors that I mentioned, I try to pick up as many books as I can for them. And then of course I have a couple more authors that are probably going to make this list in the future, but I just feel like I haven't read quite enough from them to have them make this list yet. So I'll probably do another video like this in the future for when I do start reading more books from more authors. But for right now, that's the list. What about your own? I would love to know what some of your auto-buy authors are for these different genres. Do you have any that overlap with my own? I'd love to know, so definitely leave some comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I release new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!